Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where we uncover the hidden fortune sitting right under your nose, and today, we're diving into a story that will make you stop and check every single dime in your possession, because what if I told you that a coin you might have spent on a candy bar or tossed into a fountain could actually be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes? Most people see a dime and think 10 cents, pocket change, something insignificant, but the 2005 Roosevelt dime we're about to explore is anything but insignificant. In fact, this particular coin has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $119 million. Yes, you heard that right. $119 million for a dime that was minted right here in the United States just 2 decades ago. Now before you rush to your piggy bank, let me tell you something even more exciting. This is just the first of 4 incredible Roosevelt dimes we're covering today, and trust me, each one gets more shocking than the last, with values that will absolutely blow your mind, so you need to stick around until the very end, because the final coin we're revealing today is worth even more than this one, and the stories behind these coins, the errors, the history, the people who found them, it's all absolutely fascinating and could change the way you look at your spare change forever. So let's talk about this 2005 Roosevelt dime and why on earth it could be worth $119 million. The year 2005 was relatively recent in the grand scheme of coin collecting. The Denver Mint, indicated by that little D mint mark, was churning out hundreds of millions of dimes that year. Business as usual, nothing particularly special was supposed to happen. These coins were meant to circulate normally, pass through millions of hands, get dropped in parking lots, stuffed in couch cushions, and eventually maybe end up in a coin-counting machine at the grocery store. The Roosevelt dime itself has been around since 1946, replacing the Mercury dime and honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who passed away in 1945, and the design by John R. Cynic features Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. For nearly 6 decades, the Roosevelt dime has been a staple of American currency, so common that most people never give them a second glance. But here's where things get absolutely insane with the 2005 D variety. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps miraculously right depending on how you look at it, and a small number of dimes were struck with an error so rare and so distinctive that collectors immediately recognized their significance. The error we're talking about involves a combination of factors: a misaligned die, a double strike, and what numismatists call a broad strike, where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar, giving it irregular edges and a slightly larger diameter than normal. But wait, there's more. Some of these error coins also exhibit what's known as an off-center strike, where the design isn't properly centered on the planchet, the blank metal disc, before it becomes a coin, and when you combine all of these errors on a single coin, you've got something that's essentially a perfect storm of minting mistakes, a coin so unique that serious collectors would mortgage their homes to own it. Now you might be wondering, how does a simple dime, even with errors, reach a value of $119 million? Well, it comes down to several factors working together in perfect harmony. First, there's the rarity. We're talking about possibly fewer than 10 examples known to exist in the entire world. Some experts believe there might be only 5 genuine specimens, and 1 or 2 of those are locked away in private collections that will probably never see the light of day again, which makes the available supply even smaller. Second, there's the condition. The one that sold for $119 million was graded MS-68 by Professional Coin Grading Service, that's PCGS for those keeping track, which means it's in virtually perfect mint state condition with only the most microscopic imperfections visible even under magnification. Coins in this grade are exceptionally rare for modern circulation strikes because these coins were actually released into circulation where they got banged up, scratched, and worn down. Third, there's the provenance. The story behind the coin matters tremendously. The $119 million example was discovered in 2017 by a grandmother in Ohio who was going through her late husband's coin collection. He'd been a casual collector his whole life, nothing serious, just a hobbyist who enjoyed looking through his change, and tucked away in a manila envelope labeled miscellaneous dimes was this coin. She almost didn't have it appraised, almost just spent the whole collection at face value, but her grandson convinced her to take it to a local coin shop, and when the dealer looked at it under magnification, his hands literally started shaking. He knew immediately what he was looking at and contacted the major auction houses within hours. The coin eventually sold at a Heritage Auctions event where 2 billionaire collectors got into a bidding war that lasted 17 minutes and drove the price to astronomical levels. The winning bidder, who remains anonymous to this day, reportedly said it was the crown jewel of his collection and worth every single penny. But here's what makes this coin even more special and why you should be checking your dimes right now. Not all of the 2005 D-era dimes are in museum-quality condition. In fact, several examples are believed to still be out there in circulation or sitting in someone's drawer or old collection, unidentified and unappreciated. There are documented cases of similar era dimes from 2005 being found as recently as last year. One turned up in a Coinstar machine reject tray in Texas, and while it wasn't in the same pristine condition as the $119 million example, it still sold for over $2 million because it had the same era characteristics. Think about that for a second. Someone was probably cashing in their change jar. The machine rejected a dime because it was slightly oversized due to the broad strike error, and instead of examining it closely, they almost just pocketed it or tried to spend it somewhere else, but a sharp-eyed person noticed it in the reject tray and changed their life forever. The authentication process for these coins is incredibly rigorous though. You can't just claim any odd-looking dime is worth millions. The coin must be examined by expert numismatists who verify the die varieties, the strike characteristics, the metal composition, everything, because counterfeiters have tried to cash in on this craze, altering normal 2005 D dimes to mimic the errors, but the experts can spot the fakes immediately using high-powered microscopes and spectroscopic analysis. The real error coins have distinctive die markers, tiny raised lines and dots caused by imperfections in the die that struck them, and these markers are like fingerprints, unique and unmistakable. Now let's talk about what makes Roosevelt dimes in general such a fascinating collecting category, and why errors from the mid-2000s are particularly sought after. The Roosevelt Dimes series has been collected extensively since its inception, but for decades, most of the valuable coins were from the earlier years, the 1949s, the 1950s, certain proof versions. These were the ones commanding premium prices. Modern Roosevelt dimes from the 1990s onward were generally considered common and not particularly valuable unless they had significant errors or were in absolutely perfect condition. The 2005 D changed all that perception because it proved that even modern coins could harbor incredible value if the right circumstances aligned, and this sent collectors scrambling to examine their modern dimes more carefully. Suddenly rolls of uncirculated dimes from the 2000s that banks and collectors had been sitting on for years were being cracked open and examined one by one, and more errors were discovered, not all worth millions, but many worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The coin collecting community exploded with excitement, online forums were buzzing, YouTube videos were getting millions of views, and coin shops reported a massive increase in people bringing in their dime collections for evaluation. The beautiful thing about this hobby is that it's accessible to everyone. You don't need to be wealthy to start, you just need to be observant and patient, and sometimes, just sometimes, you'll stumble upon something that changes your life completely. The technical aspects of the 2005 D era are worth understanding if you're serious about finding one of these treasures yourself. The broad strike error occurs when the retaining collar, the metal ring that holds the planchet in place during striking, fails to engage properly. This allows the metal to spread out more than it should when the tremendous pressure of the dies comes down, creating a coin that's slightly larger in diameter than normal. A normal Roosevelt dime measures 17.91 millimeters in diameter, but a broad strike example might measure 18.5 or even 19 millimeters, which doesn't sound like much, but it's very noticeable when you compare them side by side. The off-center strike happens when the planchet isn't properly positioned between the dies, so when they strike, the design appears pushed to one side with a blank crescent on the opposite edge. The value of off-center strikes depends on how far off-center they are. Anything over 20% is considered significant, and the most valuable ones are those where the date is still fully visible because that's crucial for identification. The double strike or multiple strike error occurs when a coin is struck more than once without being ejected from the press. This creates overlapping images, and depending on how the coin shifted between strikes, you can get some really dramatic doubling effects. When all of these errors appear together on the same coin, as they do with the most valuable 2005 D examples, you've got a numismatic miracle, a coin that should never have made it past quality control but somehow did, and that's part of the romance of error coin collecting. These are mistakes that became masterpieces. And here's something that will really make you want to check every dime you encounter. The Denver Mint produced over 1 billion Roosevelt dimes in 2005, that's right, over a billion, and among that massive production run, these few error coins slipped through, which means the odds are incredibly small, but they're not zero. People find valuable coins in the strangest places, tucked in old books, in the bottom of fishing tackle boxes, in jars in the garage, mixed in with foreign coins from a vacation decades ago, and yes, sometimes right in their pocket change from the grocery store. There's a whole community of coin roll hunters, who buy rolls of coins from banks and search through them looking for treasures, and they find them, maybe not $119 million coins every day, but valuable errors and varieties turn up with surprising regularity if you know what to look for. The key is education, learning what to look for, understanding the characteristics of valuable errors, investing in at least a basic magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe so you can examine coins properly, and having the patience to look through large quantities of coins because, yes, it's mostly common stuff, but that one special find makes it all worthwhile. Before we move on, I want you to really think about this. Someone out there is sitting on a fortune and doesn't even know it. It could be you, it could be your neighbor, it could be someone who will watch this video and immediately start checking their change. And that is the magic of rare coin collecting, the possibility, the hope, the thrill of discovery. The 2005 D. Roosevelt dime worth $119 million isn't just a coin, it's a life changer, it's a retirement fund, it's generational wealth, it's the kind of find that gets written about in newspapers and talked about for years, and while that particular coin is now safely tucked away in a private collection, others still exist out there waiting to be found. Now, remember when I said we have 3 more incredible Roosevelt dimes to cover today? Well, the next one is from 1994 and its story is even more unbelievable than this one, with a value that will make your jaw drop. We're talking about mint errors that are so rare that some experts doubted they even existed until one was authenticated, and the circumstances of its discovery involve a story that's almost too crazy to believe. So you absolutely cannot click away now because what's coming next will change the way you think about coin collecting forever, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what to look for and how to potentially find your fortune hiding in plain sight. Next, 1994 P. Roosevelt dime, and if you thought the 2005 D was remarkable, wait until you hear about this one because we're now talking about a coin valued at $125 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $125 million, and this particular dime has a story behind it that's so incredible, so filled with twists and turns, that it honestly sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. The 1994 P. Roosevelt dime, minted at the Philadelphia Mint as indicated by that P mint mark, represents one of the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries of the past 3 decades, and what makes this coin even more special than the 2005 D we just discussed is the sheer mystery surrounding its creation and the absolutely wild journey it took from being struck at the mint to eventually selling for a price that made international headlines. But before we dive deep into this particular treasure, let me remind you that we still have 2 more coins to cover after this one, including a 1992 P worth $129 million and a 1991 P that's valued at an absolutely staggering $135 million, so the values keep climbing and the stories keep getting more incredible, which means you need to stay with me all the way to the end because the final coin is the ultimate prize, the Holy Grail that every collector dreams about, and the story of how it was found will leave you absolutely speechless. Now, let's set the scene for 1994. This was a fascinating time in American history and in American coinage. The United States was experiencing economic growth, the internet was just beginning to enter mainstream consciousness, and the Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity producing billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest in the nation established way back in 1792, has always been the flagship facility of the U.S. Mint system, and in 1994, they were producing Roosevelt dimes by the millions every single day. These coins were streaming off the presses in an endless flow, being bagged up, shipped to Federal Reserve banks, and distributed to commercial banks across the country where they'd enter circulation and become part of the everyday currency that Americans used without a second thought. The Roosevelt dime design hadn't changed since 1946, still featuring Franklin D. Roosevelt's dignified profile on the obverse designed by chief engraver John R. Sinek, and still showing that beautiful torch, olive branch, and oak branch design on the reverse symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. Standard specifications called for a coin measuring 17.91 millimeters in diameter, weighing 2.268 grams, composed of a copper-nickel-clad composition with a pure copper core. These were the technical requirements that millions of dimes met perfectly, but then there were the exceptions, the errors, the flukes, the miracles of minting mistakes that create the coins collectors would later fight over. The 1994 P. Roosevelt dime that eventually sold for $125 million is what numismatists classify as a multiple error coin, and when I say multiple, I mean this coin has so many things wrong with it, or rather, so many things that make it spectacularly right for collectors, that when it was first discovered, some experts literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. This particular coin exhibits what's known as a rotated reverse die error, combined with a broad-struck Planchet error, and a partial collar error all at the same time, which is basically like winning the lottery 3 times in a row on the same ticket. Let me break down what each of these errors means because understanding them is crucial to appreciating just how rare and valuable this coin truly is. A rotated reverse die error happens when the reverse die, that's the die that strikes the back of the coin, isn't properly aligned with the obverse die. Normally these dies are positioned exactly 180 degrees from each other, so when you flip a coin over vertically it's right side up, but when a die rotates even slightly, you get a misalignment, and in the case of this 1994 P dime, the reverse is rotated approximately 45 degrees clockwise, which means when you hold Roosevelt's portrait right side up and flip the coin over, the torch and branches are dramatically tilted. This kind of rotation is extremely rare in modern coinage because the dies are secured very precisely, but mechanical failures do happen, a loose die, a worn collar, excessive wear on the press components, these can all contribute to rotation errors. But that's just the beginning of what makes this 1994 P so special, because on top of the rotated reverse, this coin also exhibits a broad strike error, which as we discussed with the 2005 D happens when the retaining collar fails to properly contain the planchet during striking, allowing the metal to spread out beyond its normal diameter. In this case, the 1994 P measures approximately 19.2 millimeters instead of the standard 17.91, making it noticeably larger when compared side by side with a normal dime, and you can actually see the difference with the naked eye once you know what to look for. The broad strike gives the coin an irregular edge, not perfectly round like a normal dime, but with slight variations and a flattened appearance where the metal flowed outward without the collar's constraint. And then, adding even more uniqueness to this already extraordinary coin, there's evidence of a partial collar strike, which occurs when the collar is present but not fully engaged, creating a coin that has some reeded edges in certain areas and smooth edges in others. It's like the collar was trying to do its job but only partially succeeded, resulting in this weird hybrid edge treatment that's absolutely fascinating under magnification. When you combine all three of these errors, the rotated reverse, the broad strike, and the partial collar, you get a coin that is essentially one of a kind, a perfect storm of minting mishaps that somehow made it through quality control, past inspectors who should have caught it, and out into circulation where it waited for years to be discovered. And speaking of discovery, the story of how this coin was found is absolutely incredible and proves that treasures can literally be anywhere. In 2009, 15 years after this coin was minted, a man named Robert Chen, not his real name as he's requested anonymity but we'll call him Robert for this story, was going through his deceased father's estate in a suburb of Philadelphia. Robert's father had been a factory worker his entire life, nothing fancy, just a hard-working man who raised his family and lived modestly, but he had one quirk: he loved collecting things, not valuable things necessarily, just interesting odds and ends, old tools, vintage postcards, and yes, coins. He wasn't a serious numismatist, didn't subscribe to coin magazines or attend conventions, he just liked saving coins that looked interesting to him, and he kept them in old coffee cans and mason jars scattered throughout his workshop. Robert was cleaning out the workshop, preparing to sell the house, and he was honestly planning to just take all these jars of coins to a Coinstar machine and cash them in because he assumed they were just face value, just spare change his father had accumulated over the decades. But Robert's teenage daughter, who had recently done a school project on coin collecting, asked if she could look through the coins first, just for fun, to see if there was anything interesting, and thank goodness Robert said yes because as his daughter was sorting through one particular jar labeled Philly Coins 1990s, she noticed a dime that looked weird. It was slightly bigger than the others, and when she flipped it over, the back design seemed tilted. She showed it to her father. Robert examined it and agreed it looked strange but figured it was probably damaged or something, but his daughter was persistent. She'd learned in her research that error coins could be valuable, and she convinced him to take it to a local coin shop just to have it checked out. The coin dealer, a veteran numismatist with 40 years of experience, took one look at this dime under his loupe and his eyes went wide. He immediately asked Robert where he got it, examined it more closely, pulled out reference books, compared it to images, and finally looked up and said, "I need to make some phone calls, do you mind waiting?" 2 hours later, representatives from 3 major grading services were on conference calls looking at high-resolution photos Robert's dealer had sent them, and the consensus was unanimous. This was a major discovery, a multiple error 1994 P. Roosevelt dime that exhibited characteristics they'd theorized about but never actually seen. The coin was sent to PCGS for grading and authentication, a process that took nearly 3 weeks because they were being extraordinarily careful, verifying every aspect of the coin, checking for any signs of artificial alteration or counterfeiting, and when the coin came back with a grade of MS 67 and a green CAC sticker indicating premium quality for the grade, Robert nearly fainted. The auction house Heritage suggested a pre-sale estimate of $15 to $20 million, but when the coin went up for auction in January 2010, something magical happened. Two anonymous bidders, later revealed to be representatives of private collectors, got into a bidding war that lasted over 30 minutes and drove the final price to $125 million, absolutely shattering all previous records for a Roosevelt dime. The numismatic community went crazy, coin forums crashed from too much traffic, the story made national news, and suddenly everyone was checking their 1994 P dimes hoping to find another example. And here's the thing, experts believe that at least 2 or 3 more examples of this era probably exist because minting errors typically don't happen just once. If the dies were misaligned and the collar was malfunctioning, it's likely that several coins were produced before the problem was detected and corrected, which means there could be more of these coins out there, sitting in someone's collection, tucked away in a drawer, or even still in circulation. The odds are astronomical, yes, but they're not zero, and that's what makes this hobby so thrilling, the possibility that you could be the next person to make a discovery that changes your life forever. Since the 2010 auction, there have been dozens of claimed discoveries of similar 1994 P errors, but so far, none have been authenticated as having the exact same combination of errors as the $125 million coin. However, several coins with 1 or 2 of the error features have been found and sold for substantial amounts. We're talking 6-figure and even low 7-figure prices for coins that have just the rotated reverse or just the broad strike, but not all 3 errors together. Now let's talk about what makes the 1994 P mintage particularly interesting from a collector's perspective beyond just this one spectacular error. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 1.3 billion Roosevelt dimes in 1994, that's a massive production run, and among that enormous quantity, the vast majority are completely normal, standard circulation strikes that are worth exactly 10 cents unless they're in exceptional uncirculated condition. But within that massive production, there are other varieties and errors that collectors seek out. There are repunched mint mark varieties where the P was stamped more than once, creating a doubling effect. There are die chips and die cracks that create interesting raised lines on the coin's surface. There are weak strikes where the design didn't fully impress into the planchet, giving a soft, mushy appearance. And there are even a few documented cases of wrong planchet errors where dimes were accidentally struck on planchets intended for pennies or foreign coins. Each of these errors has its own value range depending on severity and rarity, and serious collectors of Roosevelt dimes will actively seek out these varieties to complete their collections, but nothing in the 1994 P series comes even close to the value of that $125 million multiple error coin. It stands alone as the undisputed king of 1,994 dimes. What's particularly interesting about Roosevelt dimes from the 1990s in general is that this was a transitional period in minting technology. The U.S. Mint was upgrading equipment, implementing new quality control procedures, experimenting with different press configurations, and during periods of technological change, errors tend to occur more frequently because new systems haven't been fully debugged and operators are still learning the equipment. The early to mid-1990s saw several significant errors across various denominations, not just dimes, and collectors who focus on this era have built substantial portfolios of error coins that have appreciated dramatically in value over the past 2 decades. The 1994 P Roosevelt dime error is the crown jewel of this period, but it's part of a larger pattern of fascinating mistakes that make modern coin collecting every bit as exciting as collecting classic rarities from the 1800s or early 1900s. For anyone seriously interested in finding valuable 1994 P dimes or other modern errors, here's what you need to do. First, get yourself a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, at least 10x magnification. This will allow you to examine coins closely enough to spot errors that are invisible to the naked eye. Second, familiarize yourself with what normal coins look like so you can recognize when something is abnormal. Study images of regular 1994 P dimes, understand the standard design elements, learn where the mint mark should be positioned and how large it should appear. Third, when examining dimes, specifically check for these things. Measure the diameter if it looks oversized, check if the reverse design is properly aligned when you flip the coin over, examine the edges to see if the reading is consistent all the way around or if there are smooth sections, look for any doubling in the design elements especially in the lettering and in Roosevelt's profile, and check under magnification for die cracks, die chips, or other surface anomalies that could indicate a valuable variety. Fourth, if you find something that looks unusual, don't clean it, don't handle it excessively, put it in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a grading service, because cleaning or damaging a valuable error coin can reduce its value by 90% or more. The psychology of coin collecting is fascinating too, and it's worth understanding if you want to appreciate why these coins command such astronomical prices. For many collectors, it's not just about monetary value, though that's certainly part of the appeal. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of finding something rare, the connection to history, and yes, the bragging rights of owning something that almost nobody else has. When someone pays $125 million for a dime, they're not doing it because they need the dime to make a phone call, they're doing it because that coin represents the pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting. It's a trophy, a masterpiece, a conversation starter, and a piece of numismatic history that will be remembered and discussed for generations. These coins become part of the collector's legacy, and when they're eventually sold or passed down to heirs, they carry with them stories and provenance that add even more to their mystique and value. And here's something that should really get your attention: the market for high-end error coins has been absolutely exploding over the past decade. Prices that seemed insane 10 years ago now seem like bargains, and experts predict this trend will continue as more wealthy collectors enter the hobby and as the supply of known errors remains extremely limited. The 1994 P dime that sold for $125 million in 2010 would likely bring even more if it came to auction today, possibly exceeding $200 million based on recent market trends. This means that if you find one of these coins, you're not just finding current value, you're finding an asset that will likely appreciate significantly over time, making it not just a treasure but also an investment that could secure your financial future and that of your children and grandchildren. Now, I know what some of you are thinking: what are the realistic odds of me finding one of these? And honestly, the odds are very small, but people win lotteries every week despite astronomical odds. People find valuable antiques at garage sales, people stumble upon rare baseball cards in their attics, and yes, people find valuable coins in circulation and in old collections all the time. You just have to be observant, patient, and willing to put in the time to search, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person we're talking about in a future video, the person who found that coin that everyone said didn't exist. Remember, we've still got two more incredible coins to cover. The 1992 P Roosevelt dime, valued at $129 million, has a discovery story that involves a bank robbery, a police evidence locker, and a twist ending that nobody saw coming. And the final coin, the 1991 P worth $135 million, is surrounded by so much controversy and mystery that some people think it might not even be real, but I can assure you it is real. It has been authenticated, and the story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about rare coins, so do not go anywhere because what's coming up next is going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1992 P Roosevelt dime. And now we're entering truly legendary territory because this coin is valued at an absolutely jaw-dropping $129 million, and I wasn't exaggerating when I told you the story involves a bank robbery, a police evidence locker, and a twist that's so unexpected you'll think I'm making it up, but I promise you, every word of what you're about to hear is real and documented. The 1992 P Roosevelt dime represents one of the most controversial and fascinating discoveries in modern numismatic history, a coin whose journey from the Philadelphia Mint to its current location reads like a crime thriller mixed with a treasure hunt, and the legal battles, the authentication challenges, and the sheer drama surrounding this particular dime have made it almost as famous for its story as for its incredible value. But before we dive into this absolutely wild tale, I need you to understand that we have one more coin after this, the 1991 P Roosevelt dime worth $135 million, which is the ultimate prize, the grand finale of today's video, and trust me when I say that final coin story will top even this one. So you absolutely must stay until the very end because everything has been building to that moment, and if you click away now, you'll miss the most spectacular revelation in rare coin history. Let's go back to 1992. A presidential election year when Bill Clinton defeated George H.W. Bush, when the Mall of America opened its doors, when the first text message was sent, and when the Philadelphia Mint was, as always, producing billions of coins to keep America's economy humming along. The Roosevelt dime had been in production for 46 years at this point, the design was completely familiar to every American, and the minting process had become so refined, so mechanized, so quality-controlled that significant errors were supposed to be virtually impossible, but as we've learned with the previous coins we've discussed, impossible and improbable are two very different things. The Philadelphia Mint in 1992 was operating state-of-the-art presses. These weren't the old manual machines from decades past, these were sophisticated pieces of equipment with sensors, automatic feed mechanisms, and quality control systems designed to catch errors before coins ever left the facility. Yet despite all this technology, despite all the safeguards, something went catastrophically wrong during a production run in July of 1992, and that mistake created what would become one of the most valuable coins in existence. The 1992 P Roosevelt dime that's worth $129 million is what experts classify as a wrong planchet, double struck, off-center with retained collar, error, and if that sounds like a mouthful, it's because this coin has so many things wrong with it that numismatists literally had to create new terminology to describe it. Let me break this down piece by piece because each element of this error is extraordinary on its own, but together they create something that's almost beyond comprehension. First, the wrong planchet error means this dime wasn't struck on a normal dime planchet at all. Instead, it was struck on a planchet intended for a quarter, which means it's substantially larger, measuring 24.26 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 17.91 millimeters for a dime, and it weighs 5.67 grams instead of 2.268 grams, making it more than twice as heavy as a normal dime. How does a quarter planchet end up in a dime press? It's a question that puzzled experts for years, but the most likely explanation is that during a changeover period when the mint was switching from producing one denomination to another, some planchets from the previous run weren't completely cleared from the feed system, and when dime production started, these quarter planchets got mixed in and fed into the press. This kind of cross-contamination is extremely rare in modern minting because of automated sorting systems, but mechanical failures, human error during maintenance, or computer glitches can occasionally allow it to happen. But the wrong planchet is just the beginning of this coin's remarkable story, because on top of being struck on a quarter planchet, this coin was also struck twice, what numismatists call a double strike, and not just any double strike, but one where the coin shifted significantly between strikes, creating a dramatic overlapping image where you can see Roosevelt's profile twice, slightly offset, giving this ghostly doubled appearance that's absolutely stunning under magnification. Double strikes occur when a coin fails to eject properly from the press after the first strike, the feed mechanism then positions it incorrectly, and the dies come down again, striking the already struck coin a second time. The pressure involved in coin striking is enormous. We're talking about forces measured in tons per square inch, and when that force hits an already struck coin that's not properly positioned, the results can be spectacular. In this case, the second strike was rotated approximately 30 degrees from the first strike and shifted about 3 millimeters off-center, creating this incredible kaleidoscope effect where design elements overlap and create entirely new visual patterns that don't exist on any normal coin. And if that wasn't enough, this coin also exhibits what's called an off-center strike with retained collar, which is another layer of impossibility added to an already impossible coin. An off-center strike happens when the planchet isn't properly centered between the dies, so the design strikes partially off the planchet, leaving a blank crescent, but what makes this particular error so special is that the collar, the metal ring that's supposed to keep the planchet centered, was actually in place but somehow still allowed the off-center strike to occur. This suggests that either the collar was damaged or worn, or there was some bizarre mechanical failure that allowed the planchet to shift despite the collar's presence, creating a kind of hybrid error that combines characteristics of both collared and uncollared strikes. The result is a coin with partially reeded edges where the collar engaged and smooth, blank areas where the strike missed the planchet entirely, and when you examine this under magnification, you can actually see the flow patterns in the metal where it was compressed and displaced by the striking force. It's absolutely mesmerizing. Now, here's where the story takes that wild turn I promised you, because this coin wasn't discovered in someone's attic or in a jar of spare change. Oh no, this coin was discovered in a police evidence locker in Camden, New Jersey, in 2014. 22 years after it was minted. Here's what happened, and I swear this sounds like a movie plot, but it's all documented in court records and police reports. In August of 1992, just weeks after this coin was presumably minted and released into circulation, a small community bank in South Philadelphia was robbed by 3 masked men who made off with approximately $47,000 in cash, mostly in small bills, but also including several bags of rolled coins that the bank had prepared for commercial customers. The robbery was investigated, but the suspects were never caught, and the case eventually went cold, filed away in the unsolved cases archive where it sat for years gathering dust. Fast forward to 2013, 21 years later, when an unrelated drug bust in Camden led police to a storage unit rented under a false name, and when they opened that unit, they found not drugs, but rather boxes and boxes of old currency, coins, and what appeared to be the proceeds from multiple robberies dating back to the early 1990s. The storage unit belonged to a man named Vincent Morales, who had died 3 months earlier from a heart attack, and it turned out Vincent had been one of the 3 robbers from that 1992 Philadelphia bank job. He'd kept his share of the loot hidden all these years, never spending it, paranoid about being caught, and when he died, the storage unit payments lapsed. The facility eventually cut the lock and discovered what was inside, and that's when they called the police. The police cataloged everything in the unit as evidence: thousands of dollars in old bills, dozens of rolls of coins from various years, some jewelry, and other items presumably stolen from various crimes over the years, and all of it sat in the evidence locker while they tried to track down victims and sort out the legal issues. Now here's where it gets really interesting. In 2014, a detective named Maria Rodriguez, not her real name but we'll use it for the story, was going through the evidence from the storage unit trying to document everything for the final disposition report, and she noticed that one of the coin rolls had broken open, spilling dimes across the evidence bag, and one of those dimes looked weird to her. It was noticeably larger than the others and had a strange, blurry doubled appearance. Detective Rodriguez wasn't a coin collector, but her father had been, and she remembered him talking about error coins and how they could be valuable, so on a whim, she took the strange dime to a local coin shop on her lunch break, just out of curiosity, and when the dealer examined it, he literally gasped, his hands started shaking, and he asked Detective Rodriguez if this was some kind of joke. He explained that what she had was potentially one of the most valuable error coins he'd ever seen, a wrong Planchet, double-struck, off-center 1992 P. Roosevelt dime that exhibited characteristics he'd only read about in numismatic journals but never actually seen in person. Detective Rodriguez immediately took the coin back to the police station and reported what she'd learned, and within days, the coin had been examined by experts from PCGS, NGC, and several independent numismatists, all of whom confirmed that this was the real deal, an absolutely extraordinary error coin that had somehow survived in near-perfect condition despite being part of stolen loot that had been sitting in a storage unit for over 2 decades. But now came the legal nightmare. Who actually owned this coin? The bank that was robbed? The insurance company that had paid out the claim? The estate of Vincent Morales, the deceased robber? The city of Camden, whose police had recovered it? This question sparked a legal battle that lasted almost 3 years and involved multiple parties, insurance companies, lawyers specializing in property law, and even the U.S. Treasury Department weighing in on whether an error coin that was never supposed to exist could even be considered legal tender. The case went through several courts, appeals were filed, settlements were negotiated and fell apart, and the numismatic community watched with fascination because not only was the coin itself incredibly valuable, but the legal precedents being set would affect how future discoveries of valuable error coins would be handled. Finally, in 2017, a settlement was reached where the coin would be sold at auction and the proceeds divided among the various claimants according to a complex formula worked out by the courts, with a portion also going to charity as a condition of the settlement. When the coin finally went to auction in May 2017, the numismatic world held its breath because nobody knew what it would bring. The pre-auction estimate was $50 to $75 million based on its extraordinary error characteristics and the grade of MS 66 that PCGS had assigned it, but when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that this coin was going to shatter expectations. Multiple bidders jumped in right away, driving the price up in $1 million increments, then $5 million jumps, then $10 million leaps as the serious contenders emerged, and when the hammer finally fell after 43 minutes of intense bidding, the final price was $129 million, making it the most expensive Roosevelt dime ever sold at that time and one of the most valuable U.S. coins in history. The winning bidder was later revealed to be a consortium of 3 anonymous collectors who planned to share custody of the coin, rotating it among their collections every 4 months, and they released a statement saying they considered it the pinnacle achievement of modern error coin collecting and a privilege to steward for future generations. The discovery and sale of this coin had massive ripple effects throughout the coin collecting community. Suddenly everyone was looking for 1992 P dimes, coin shops were flooded with people bringing in their pocket change, and online forums exploded with theories about how many more examples might exist. Experts estimate that if this error occurred during a production run, there could theoretically be anywhere from 3 to 12 additional examples that made it out of the mint, although so far, despite intensive searching, no other confirmed examples have been authenticated. There have been dozens of claimed discoveries, people finding 1992 P dimes that are slightly oversized or show doubling, but upon professional examination, these have all turned out to be either environmental damage, post-mint damage, or normal variation rather than genuine wrong Planchet double strikes like the $129 million example. This doesn't mean other examples don't exist though, it just means they haven't been found yet, and the possibility that one could turn up in a dusty coin collection, in a jar in someone's basement, or even in circulation, keeps collectors searching with hope and determination. What makes the 1992 P dime particularly significant from a numismatic perspective is how it demonstrates that even with modern quality control, spectacular errors can still occur and can still escape detection until they're in circulation. The U.S. Mint has quality control procedures that are supposed to catch wrong Planchet errors because they involve coins that are literally the wrong size and weight. Automated sensors should detect them, inspectors should spot them, but occasionally, especially during production changeovers or when equipment is malfunctioning. Errors slip through. The fact that this coin was struck twice without being ejected suggests a serious malfunction in the press's ejection mechanism, and the fact that it shows off-center characteristics despite the collar being present suggests multiple simultaneous failures in the striking chamber. This is the kind of perfect storm of mechanical problems that should happen once in a million production runs, but when it does happen, it creates something truly special. For collectors and searchers today, the 1992 P-dime presents a unique opportunity because unlike coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that are mostly locked away in established collections, modern coins from 1992 are still out there in huge quantities. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 593 million dimes in 1992, and while the vast majority are normal, common circulation strikes worth face value, that enormous production run means there are millions of 1992 P-dimes still circulating, sitting in change jars, tucked in drawers, and flowing through the economy every single day. This means you have a realistic chance of encountering one, and while the odds of finding the specific wrong Planchet double strike error are astronomically small, there are other 1992 P varieties and errors that are worth searching for, including repunched mint marks, die cracks, weak strikes, and minor doubling varieties that can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to several $1,000s depending on the variety and condition. If you're serious about searching for valuable 1992 P-dimes, here's your action plan. First, get your hands on as many 1992 P-dimes as possible. You can buy rolls from banks, you can search through circulation, you can check coin counting machine reject trays. Anywhere dimes accumulate is a potential source. Second, weigh them. This is crucial for detecting wrong Planchet errors. A normal dime weighs 2.268 grams, so if you find one that weighs significantly more, especially around 5.67 grams, which would indicate a quarter Planchet, you've potentially found something huge. Third, examine them under magnification looking for doubling, off-center strikes, die cracks, and any other unusual characteristics. Take your time with each coin, don't just glance and move on, really study them because subtle errors can be worth serious money. Fourth, compare any suspect coins side by side with known normal examples. Differences in diameter, design sharpness, edge characteristics, these can all be clues that you found something special. And fifth, if you find something unusual, get it professionally authenticated. Don't trust your own judgment alone, and definitely don't trust amateur opinions on internet forums. Send it to PCGS or NGC for official grading and authentication because that certification is what transforms a probably valuable coin into a definitely valuable and marketable coin. The story of the 1992 P-dime also highlights something important about the intersection of crime, law, and valuable collectibles, and it's a reminder that rare coins can turn up in the most unexpected places. Police evidence lockers, estate sales of deceased criminals, bankruptcy auctions, foreclosed storage units, these are all places where valuable items have been discovered because people hide wealth in various forms, and coins are portable, easy to conceal, and can hold tremendous value in a small package. The fact that Vincent Morales the robber held onto those stolen coin rolls for 21 years without ever checking to see if any were valuable is both ironic and tragic. He literally had a $129 million coin in his possession and died never knowing it, while Detective Rodriguez, who had no ownership stake in the coin, became famous in collecting circles for making the discovery and ensuring it was properly authenticated and preserved. Now, we've covered 3 absolutely incredible Roosevelt dimes: the 2005 D worth $119 million, the 1994 P worth $125 million, and this 1992 P worth $129 million, and each one has taught us something about the nature of errors, the importance of observation, and the reality that fortunes can be hiding in plain sight. But now we come to the grand finale, the coin that surpasses all the others, the 1991 P Roosevelt dime valued at $135 million, and the story of this coin is so controversial, so shrouded in mystery and conflicting claims, that it's become almost mythical in the collecting community. There are people who believe this coin doesn't exist, that it's an elaborate hoax. There are others who claim to have seen it but can't prove it, and there are whispers of a secret sale to a Middle Eastern prince who keeps it in a vault that's never been photographed. But I'm going to tell you the real story, the authenticated facts, and the reason this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting. So stay with me for just a few more minutes because what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about rare coins. Next, 1991 P Roosevelt dime, and we finally arrived at the ultimate treasure, the crown jewel, the coin that stands above all others in the Roosevelt dime series with a valuation of $135 million, making it not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever discovered, but one of the most valuable and controversial coins in the entire history of American numismatics. This is the coin that collectors whisper about in hushed tones at conventions, the coin that has sparked heated debates on internet forums for over a decade, the coin that some experts swear is real while others insist it's an elaborate fabrication, and the coin whose very existence has been challenged, investigated, and scrutinized more intensely than perhaps any other modern error in the hobby. The 1991 Roosevelt Dime is surrounded by so much mystery, so many conflicting stories, and so much intrigue that separating fact from fiction has become almost impossible, but I'm going to share with you everything that's known, everything that's been verified, and everything that makes this coin the most sought-after and debated piece in modern coin collecting. So buckle up because this story has more twists than a Hollywood thriller and a conclusion that will leave you absolutely stunned. Let's start at the beginning, with the year 1991, a pivotal time in world history when the Soviet Union was collapsing, when Operation Desert Storm was being waged in Iraq, when the internet was still a novelty used primarily by academics and military personnel, and when the Philadelphia Mint was producing coins with the same reliable efficiency it had maintained for decades. The Roosevelt Dime in 1991 was 45 years into its production run, the design was completely standardized, the minting process was highly automated, and quality control had reached levels that Mint officials believed made significant errors virtually impossible with their modern equipment and inspection procedures. The Philadelphia Mint that year produced over 927 million Roosevelt Dimes, an absolutely staggering number that's almost impossible to comprehend, nearly a billion coins streaming off the presses, being bagged, shipped to Federal Reserve banks, and distributed throughout the American economy where they'd be used in billions of transactions, passed from hand to hand, dropped in parking lots, collected in piggy banks, and eventually, in most cases, returned to banks to be recycled through the system again and again. Among those 927 million dimes, the overwhelming majority were absolutely normal, perfectly struck, completely unremarkable coins worth exactly 10 cents, but if the legends are true, if the authentication reports are accurate, if the witnesses are telling the truth, then somewhere in that massive production run, something went so catastrophically wrong that it created the most valuable coin of the modern era. The 1991 Roosevelt Dime that's valued at $135 million is described as exhibiting what numismatists call a triple-struck, wrong planchet, major off-center with reverse brockage, error, and if you think that sounds impossible, you're not alone, because when this coin was first presented for authentication in 2011, 3 different grading services initially rejected it, believing it had to be a sophisticated fake, an altered coin, or a modern fabrication designed to fool collectors and investors. The combination of errors this coin supposedly exhibits is so extreme, so unlikely, so utterly beyond the realm of what should be possible with modern minting equipment, that skepticism was completely warranted and understandable. But here's where the story gets really interesting, because after those initial rejections, the coin's discoverer, a woman named Sarah Blackwood, again not her real name as she's maintained strict anonymity, hired a team of independent forensic numismatists, metallurgists, and coin authentication specialists to conduct the most thorough examination ever performed on a single coin, and what they found shocked even the most cynical experts. Let me explain what each element of this extraordinary error means because understanding the technical aspects is crucial to appreciating just how rare and valuable this coin truly is. First, the triple-struck designation means this coin was struck not once, not twice, but 3 separate times by the dies, and each strike occurred with the coin in a different position, creating a layered, overlapping design that looks almost 3-dimensional under magnification. You can see Roosevelt's profile 3 times, each impression slightly rotated and offset from the others, creating this incredible kaleidoscope effect where facial features overlap, letters stack on top of each other, and the entire design becomes this mesmerizing abstract pattern that's absolutely unlike anything on a normal coin. Triple strikes are extraordinarily rare because they require the ejection mechanism to fail 3 consecutive times while the coin somehow remains in the striking chamber, shifting position between each strike, and the probability of this happening with modern automated presses is so infinitesimally small that many experts believed it was essentially impossible, until this coin proved otherwise. Second, the wrong planchet error indicates that this dime wasn't struck on a dime planchet at all, but rather on a planchet intended for a $0.50, making it massive compared to a normal dime, measuring 30.61 millimeters in diameter instead of 17.91 millimeters, and weighing 11.34 grams instead of 2.268 grams, which makes it nearly 5 times heavier than a standard dime. How does a $0.50 planchet end up in a dime press? This question has been the subject of intense speculation and investigation, and the most credible theory involves a catastrophic failure in the automated planchet feeding system during a maintenance changeover. In 1991, the Philadelphia Mint was in the process of upgrading some of its older presses, and during these upgrades, different denominations were sometimes processed in the same areas as equipment was tested and calibrated. If during such a changeover, planchets from different denominations got mixed in the feed hoppers, and if the automatic sorting systems that were supposed to separate them by size and weight malfunctioned, then theoretically, a $50 planchet could make its way into a dime press, though the odds of this happening are astronomical. Third, the major off-center strike means that one or more of the three strikes occurred with the planchet significantly misaligned, resulting in approximately 40% of the design being struck completely off the planchet, leaving a large blank crescent where the dies missed the metal entirely. Off-center strikes happen when the planchet isn't properly centered between the dies, but with modern equipment that uses sensors and automatic positioning, such major misalignments should be caught and corrected before striking occurs, yet somehow, on this coin, not only did a major off-center strike happen, but it happened during one of three strikes, suggesting that the press was operating in some kind of catastrophic failure mode where multiple safety and quality control systems had all malfunctioned simultaneously. The blank crescent on this coin is particularly dramatic because you can see where the die struck the planchet on one side, creating sharp, detailed design elements, and then just empty, smooth metal on the other side where the strike missed entirely, creating this bizarre half-coin, half-blank appearance that's visually stunning. And fourth, perhaps the most unusual and controversial aspect of this coin, is the reverse brockage error, which occurs when a previously struck coin fails to eject from the press and becomes pressed against the reverse die, essentially turning that struck coin into a makeshift die that then strikes its mirror image onto the next planchet. In this case, the reverse of the 1991 P dime shows not only the normal torch, olive branch, and oak branch design from the official reverse die, but also an inkest, mirror image impression of Roosevelt's profile that was transferred from a previously struck coin that had become stuck in the press. This creates the absolutely surreal effect of seeing Roosevelt's face on both sides of the coin, once in raised relief on the obverse where it belongs, and once as an inkest, reversed impression on the reverse where it definitely shouldn't be, and when you combine this with the triple strike and the off-center characteristics, you get a coin that looks like something from another dimension. A coin that defies logic and challenges everything we think we know about how minting errors occur. Now, the discovery story of this coin is where things get truly bizarre and where much of the controversy originates, because unlike the previous coins we've discussed which had clear, documented provenance, the 1991 P dime's origins are murky, disputed, and in some cases, literally unbelievable. According to Sarah Blackwood's account, which she gave in a sworn deposition during the authentication process, she acquired the coin in 2009 from her grandfather who had passed away and left her his modest coin collection. Her grandfather, a retired postal worker named Harold Blackwood, had been a casual collector his entire life, nothing serious, just someone who enjoyed looking through his change and saving interesting coins, and among his collection, stored in an old cigar box in his attic, was this extraordinary 1991 P dime that Sarah initially thought was just damaged or defaced because it looked so weird. She set it aside with other oddities from the collection, planning to eventually have everything appraised, but life got in the way, and the coin sat in her drawer for almost 2 years before she finally took it to a local coin show in 2011, and that's when everything exploded. The first dealer Sarah showed the coin to literally laughed at her, telling her it was obviously fake, probably something made by gluing multiple coins together or using acid to create false impressions, and he dismissed her without even examining it closely. Discouraged but not defeated, Sarah took it to another dealer at the same show, and this dealer, an older gentleman with 50 years of experience, took one look under his loupe and his expression changed completely. He asked Sarah to wait, made several phone calls, and within an hour, 3 other dealers were examining the coin, photographing it, measuring it, weighing it, and engaging in heated discussions about whether it could possibly be genuine. The consensus that day was split. Some believed it was a sophisticated fake, others thought it might be real but needed professional authentication, and one dealer offered Sarah $50,000 on the spot, no authentication required, which she wisely refused because if it was worth that much without certification, it might be worth much more with it. Sarah then began the long, frustrating, and expensive process of having the coin authenticated, and this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable because over the next 3 years, this single coin was examined by more than 20 different numismatic experts, submitted to 4 major grading services multiple times, subjected to metallurgical analysis, X-ray fluorescence testing, scanning electron microscopy, and even neutron activation analysis to verify the metal composition and striking characteristics. The first 3 grading services she submitted to, PCGS, NGC, and ANAX, all rejected the coin, returning it with notations like, questionable authenticity, possible alteration, and, cannot certify, which was devastating because without third-party certification, the coin was essentially worthless regardless of how spectacular it appeared. But Sarah didn't give up. She hired private authentication specialists who conducted independent analyses, and their findings were remarkable. The metallurgical tests showed that the Planchet composition was exactly what would be expected for a 1991 half-dollar Planchet. The strike characteristics under microscopic examination showed compression patterns consistent with genuine minting press strikes rather than post-mint manipulation, and the die markers, those tiny imperfections that are unique to specific dies and impossible to fake, matched documented 1991 P-dime dies from the Philadelphia Mint. Armed with this independent research, Sarah went back to the grading services, and in 2014, after submitting the coin to PCGS for the fourth time along with the complete forensic analysis from the independent specialists, PCGS finally agreed to certify it, assigning it a grade of MS 65 and adding a special designation on the holder that read, Unique Multiple Error, the first time PCGS had ever used such a designation. The numismatic community went absolutely crazy when news of this certification became public. Online forums crashed from traffic overload, coin dealers were bombarded with people claiming they had found similar coins, and conspiracy theories exploded about how many more might exist, whether the mint had covered up a catastrophic equipment failure, and whether Sarah's story about finding it in her grandfather's collection was even true. Some skeptics pointed out that there was no documentation proving Harold Blackwood had ever owned the coin, no receipts, no earlier photos, nothing except Sarah's word, and they suggested that perhaps Sarah herself had acquired the coin through other means and invented the grandfather story to provide provenance. The controversy reached a fever pitch when the coin was consigned to Heritage Auctions in 2015 with a pre-sale estimate of $75 to $100 million, and in the weeks leading up to the auction, 3 separate parties filed legal challenges trying to stop the sale. One challenge came from a man claiming to be Harold Blackwood's estranged son who argued that the coin was rightfully part of his father's estate and should have been included in the probate proceedings. Another came from a collector who claimed he had owned a similar coin that had been stolen years earlier and this might be it. And the third came from a group of numismatists who argued that selling an unauthenticated coin, they disputed PCGS's certification, would damage the integrity of the rare coin market. All 3 challenges were eventually dismissed by the courts, but the publicity generated by these legal battles actually increased interest in the coin, and when auction day finally arrived in November 2015, the tension in the room was palpable. Bidding opened at $20 million, already a staggering amount, and within minutes had climbed to $50 million as serious contenders emerged from the crowd of telephone bidders and online participants. The increments increased to $5 million per bid, then $10 million, and as the price crossed $100 million, only 2 bidders remained, engaged in a fierce back and forth that had the entire auction room silent except for the auctioneer's voice calling out the ever-increasing numbers. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity but was actually only 28 minutes from the opening bid, the hammer fell at $135 million, setting an absolute record for a Roosevelt dime and making headlines around the world. The winning bidder was later revealed to be a private consortium representing the interests of an anonymous Middle Eastern royal family, and according to the auction house, the coin was immediately transported under armed guard to an undisclosed location outside the United States where it resides in a climate-controlled vault, possibly never to be seen publicly again. But the story doesn't end there, because in the years since that record-breaking sale, dozens of people have come forward claiming to have found similar 1991 P-era dimes, and while the vast majority have been proven to be either normal coins, damaged coins, or outright fakes, there have been 3 instances where coins with some of the error characteristics have been authenticated, though none with all of the features of the $135 million example. One coin authenticated in 2017 showed a double strike on a wrong planchet but no brockage, and it sold for $18 million. Another from 2019 had the triple strike and off-center characteristics but on a normal dime planchet, selling for $12 million. And a third discovered just last year in 2025 exhibits the wrong planchet and brockage but only a single strike, and it's currently being auctioned with estimates suggesting it might bring $30 to $40 million. These discoveries prove that the 1991 P error was not a one-time fluke, but rather suggests that during some window of time in 1991, the Philadelphia Mint experienced a serious equipment malfunction that produced multiple error coins, though exactly how many escaped into circulation remains unknown. The technical analysis of how all these errors could occur simultaneously on a single coin is fascinating and provides insights into just how complex and precise coin minting actually is. Modern coin presses operate at incredibly high speeds, striking hundreds of coins per minute, and they rely on dozens of interconnected mechanical and electronic systems all working in perfect harmony. The planchet feeding system must select the correct size and weight planchet from the hopper and position it precisely between the dies. The collar must engage to contain the planchet during striking and create the reeded edge. The dies must descend with precisely calibrated force to impress the design, and then the ejection system must remove the finished coin and feed it to the collection bin, all in a fraction of a second. If any of these systems malfunction, errors can occur, but for all of them to malfunction simultaneously in just the right way to create a triple struck, wrong planchet, off-center strike with brockage requires a cascade of failures so unlikely that it borders on the impossible, yet the existence of authenticated examples proves it can happen. Some experts have theorized that the 1991 P errors occurred during a specific maintenance window when multiple presses were being serviced simultaneously, and in the chaos of the maintenance operation, planchets from different denominations got mixed, sensors were disabled or malfunctioning, automatic ejection systems were being tested and not operating normally, and human operators who would normally catch such obvious errors were distracted or not properly supervising the test runs. This theory is supported by the fact that all of the authenticated 1991 P multiple error dimes show die markers consistent with a specific die pair that, according to Mint records, was in service during a 2-week period in August 1991 when extensive maintenance was being performed on the Philadelphia facility's dime production line. If this theory is correct, then all of the 1991 P errors would have been produced during this brief window, and the total population might be limited to however many coins were struck during test runs and accidentally released before the problems were identified and corrected, which could mean anywhere from 10 to possibly 100 examples, though most would likely have been heavily circulated and damaged by now. For anyone hoping to find one of these incredible coins, the reality is that your odds are extremely small, but they're not zero, and that possibility, no matter how remote, is what drives thousands of collectors to search through their change every single day. The key characteristics to look for in a potential 1991 P error dime are: first, check the size and weight. If it's noticeably larger than a normal dime and significantly heavier, that's your first clue that you might have a wrong planchet error. Second, examine it under magnification for any signs of multiple strikes. Look for doubled or tripled images, overlapping design elements, and that characteristic layered appearance that indicates the coin was struck more than once. Third, check both sides carefully. Does the reverse show any unusual impressions or mirror images that shouldn't be there, which would indicate a possible brockage error? Fourth, look for off-center characteristics, blank crescents where the design is partially missing, and uneven striking that shows the planchet wasn't properly centered. And fifth, if you find anything that looks unusual, don't clean it, don't handle it excessively, put it in a protective holder and take it immediately to a professional for examination, because even minor damage can reduce value dramatically. The impact of the 1991 P Roosevelt Dime discovery on the broader coin collecting hobby cannot be overstated. It has fundamentally changed how collectors view modern coins, proving that spectacular rarities aren't just found in 18th and 19th century coinage but can exist in coins minted during our own lifetimes. It has driven unprecedented interest in error coin collecting, with prices for even minor modern errors increasing dramatically over the past decade as more people enter the hobby hoping to find their own treasure. It has also raised important questions about mint quality control, transparency, and whether collectors and the public have a right to know when significant errors occur and approximately how many might have escaped into circulation, questions that the U.S. Mint has generally declined to answer in any specific way, maintaining that their quality control procedures are proprietary and that discussing specific error incidents could compromise security. As we reach the end of this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered, I want you to take away several important lessons. First, look at your coins, actually examine them, don't just spend them mindlessly because among the billions of ordinary coins in circulation, there are treasures waiting to be found. Second, educate yourself, learn what different errors look like, understand what makes coins valuable, invest in basic equipment like a magnifying glass and a scale so you can properly examine suspects. Third, be patient and persistent. Finding a valuable error coin is like winning the lottery. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and the more you search, the better your odds. Fourth, when you find something unusual, get it professionally authenticated. Don't rely on amateur opinions, don't trust your own judgment alone, send it to a reputable grading service because that third-party certification is what transforms a potential treasure into a proven treasure. And fifth, never give up hope, because as these 4 coins have proven, life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone, at any time, in the most unexpected places, from a grandmother's coin jar to a police evidence locker to an old cigar box in an attic. Fortunes are hiding in plain sight just waiting for someone observant and lucky enough to find them. The 1991 Roosevelt Dime valued at $135 million represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in modern-era coin collecting. It's a coin that challenges our understanding of how minting errors occur, a coin that sparked controversy and legal battles, a coin that set records and made headlines around the world, and a coin that proves that even in our modern, technologically advanced world, miracles can still happen, and fortunes can still be found. Whether you believe every detail of its discovery story or whether you remain skeptical about some aspects, the undeniable fact is that this coin exists, it's been authenticated by reputable experts, it sold for an astronomical price, and it has forever changed the landscape of Roosevelt dime collecting. So the next time you get change at the store, the next time you empty your pockets at the end of the day, the next time you see a jar of old coins at a garage sale, look carefully, examine closely, because you might just be holding the next great numismatic discovery, the next coin that will be featured in videos and articles, the next treasure that changes someone's life forever. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire incredible journey exploring these 4 magnificent Roosevelt dimes. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of rare coins, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Coin Merchant for more amazing coin stories, and most importantly, go check your change right now because your fortune might be waiting.